Too hot in the real world this weekend, so we're gonna go virtual. Making a blaster in the AC on Tinkercad. Let's go. Hey, how's it going? Anthony Ferraro here at Create Sci-Fi. Well, it's a cajillion degrees out in the shop, usually for like a couple weeks out of the year, it's like that. So I'm bringing it inside. I did Blender the other week. A lot of you seemed interested in that, so I thought, let's go virtual. Let's get out of the hot real world, come in the AC, go online. So I'm making a 3D blaster from scratch using Tinkercad. Now, Tinkercad, the reason I like Tinkercad and the reason I'm excited to share it with you is that it's, I don't know how to explain it. I think it's, for kids in elementary school.
This is Tinkercad, a completely free app that helps students imagine, design, and make by introducing them to the worlds of 3D design, electronics, and coding.
When I started 3D printing and then I started looking at customizing things, I didn't want to invest the 10,000 hours in learning CAD. Now, typically with me, like with Blender, if I have a goal, I'll learn the software, right? But I've never been in a position where I'm going to teach myself and be proficient in CAD. But Tinkercad is pretty cool, right? You can get in there and it's pretty intuitive, like I said, because it's geared towards kids, and you can get a lot done. So I thought, yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to take you through my process, the whole thing of making a blaster from scratch, and Tinkercad is free. So if you're like, oh, that's interesting, I'd like to try that, you can, right? So these days, the depth of teaching on YouTube is so deep and awesome that I'm not going to do a beat by beat. You grab this tool and, this many millimeters. You can find all that. I'm just going to take you through my process of sort of how I come to this, right? So enough about that. Let's get into it. And I'm just going to show you how I use Tinkercad, which is something that you can use for free. Let's go. All right. So first thing you want to do is just Google Tinkercad, sign up with Google, sign up with your email. It's all good. I don't know. I always use my email. Here you can see I have a whole library of this stuff. I've been doing this for a while. It's pretty effective and it's pretty easy and it suits my needs, right? I'm not engineering, right? I'm not making airplane parts. I'm making blasters. So start fresh. So the first thing I did is you could go online, just Google 3D blaster, right? And find something. And the reason that I downloaded this is I'm trying to make this simple for you guys. So this is like a Nerf size blaster. It's like a custom made Nerf style gun. And this is what I want to make. So I'm only using this as sort of the reference, right? So I want to get the sizes right. You can do measurements, but like I said, I just want to make it easy. So I found that if I get something that works, that I can just shape it around that and I know it'll be the right size. So all I'm doing is, I grabbed the cylinder shape. One thing you want to be careful of is the segments and the bevels, because that's what gives it sort of that low poly look. So you want to go high with all that stuff. And as far as getting it that oblong shape, again, there's no science to it. There's no sort of, what am I trying to say? There's no math. It's just, I'm pulling, right? It's like you mess around for it a while and it'll make sense, right? I pull this one, it stretches out. I pull that one, gets fatter, longer. And I'm just pulling stuff. And I'm like, okay, it needs a barrel, right? So we do the barrel. Now that's basically the size of the gun there. So now I need to make a hand grip. So that's square-ish. So I grab a square shape. Now I want it to be at that angle. So, you float around it and you see the little arrows. That arrow, if I pull it this way, it gets bigger, smaller. Oh, and there's a rotate arrow. And again, you'll probably be frustrated at first. It's like anything. You got to give it a minute. You'll be messing around and it won't do what you want it to do, but you just keep screwing around. And if you look at it like shape, so here I'm like, oh, I want like a little sort of thing to keep my hand from slipping off and to make it more my own design. And again, you know, you've heard me say this a lot on this channel. So because this is content for the internet, you know, this is all sped up. I think, let me check, this is sped up like, I don't know, 400%, right? So what I found over the years is that when I speed up these builds, it gives the illusion of like precision and like I know exactly what I'm doing. But I can't stress enough, like this piece I just dragged in, I was like, ooh, that's an interesting shape. I was looking for something else, right? And it's like, ooh, what's that? But then that one, it must be for some kind of kit for like the kids' school projects, so you can't resize it. So that's fine. So then I'm moving on, I'm looking for another shape, and I just know like, okay, I have my basic shape there, right? I have the barrel, I have the handle. Now I just want to start adding things. And, you know, I'm not a gun person, I don't own a gun. So if you're a gun person, you know, I talk about these things, the thingy and the handle. It's, I don't know, it's not about that, right? So I just know from movies and science fiction that, oh, there should be a little thingy here, right? So I found like that knurled knob, that's fine. Thanks to you guys, I will never make a gun without a trigger. So I'm like, oh, okay, here's the trigger handle. What is that, right? It's a circle with a hole in it, a donut, right? So I saw the donut shaped thing, I pulled it over. You know, I'm trying to make this stuff enjoyable for you guys, being entertaining. So I say like, oh, I grabbed this and I grabbed that. But, you know, I am thoughtful about this. You know, I could say, okay, so now we have that handle, we need a barrel, we'll get the 30 millimeter, you know, I'm just like, you grab this thing, this looks like that. Oh, whoa, what was that? That could be cool on there. Let's try it out. Drag it in there. Maybe not. And then the cool thing that I like too is there's that tool where you can center everything. So then once, kind of like if you notice with, you know, when I make the props from like the dollar store or custom printed stuff, once you put the gray primer on there, that kind of gives you a better idea what's going on, right? So here, this is like the fancy part, right? So there's these shapes and they have like the invisible lines on them, right? So what that's saying is if you put this shape on your object and then you group it, it'll make that a void. It'll make that part disappear, right? So again, I'm just trying to make this gun interesting, and I'm like, okay, well, it's futuristic. You know, it's not gunpowder. It's probably some kind of, you know, energy source or something. So I was like, oh, what if, you know, if I put these vents in there, that'll be really cool, right? So you see there, like, grouping things, ungrouping things, right? So it's like we have that body shape, we have that handle shape, we have the trigger, we have that little greebly on the bottom. Then I make it a group, make it gray, and then it's like, okay, this is starting to look like a gun. So now we can start to do greeblies. Sometimes you have to ungroup stuff, right? And you can do that. You know, it's like Apple Z, you know, just go backwards. Because now it's starting to take form, right? We're starting to have opinions about it. And it's like, ooh, maybe this goes like that. Maybe this goes like that. Maybe this thing here I want it to do, it won't do. So what now? And again, make sure that those bevels, you put enough of them in so you don't get that that low poly look. So here, this I left in. I like to leave these things in. Here I'm thinking, you know, maybe it needs like a little stealth, little angle. So ultimately I'm not gonna do this cut, but maybe this would have been the aha moment of like, oh man, this thing is amazing. So I'm messing around with that a little bit, not giving up yet. Again, this is sped up about 400%. So I'm, you know, I'm struggling like, you know, and then I think, no, let's do something else. Maybe greeblies, you know? So it has like all these electronics, and a lot of these are really cool and would work. But because I have like the rounded surface, the sort of stretched look, you know, it has that curve to it. These greeblies don't really want to set on it right. Okay, so, but I'm gonna try, right? And I like sharing with you, like, oh, what's available, right? So even though I'm not gonna use these in my gun, I'm just leaving this in here so you can see sort of my thought process. What didn't work, but maybe on another piece that would have worked, right? So, you know, it's just a hot afternoon. I'm in my office, I'm screwing around, I'm making a blaster, and, you know, all of this is free. Now imagine if we were in my garage. You know, I'd have this plastic, I'd be sawing it, be cutting it, I'd be gluing stuff would be glued to my fingers, I'd be a mess, I'd be sweating, and maybe it didn't work out, and maybe that was the afternoon. Where this is just sort of, you know, it's virtual. I wouldn't want to do this 100% of the time, but it's an option. It's a valid option, right? So now my head's back in the game. I'm like, okay, you know, and whenever I start redoing what's set, that's kind of, you know, you're in final answer mode. It's like, is this going to be it? Is this really, am I going to live with this? Maybe it needs to be, nope, not that. And then, you know, an interesting thing, you know, sort of a famous quote is, art is not finished, it's abandoned. And I definitely believe that. It's like, as long as you're doing your best and you're really going for it and you're doing the best you can, at a certain point, you know, maybe you get lucky and knock it out of the park, but at a certain point you're like, okay, yeah, that's good. Maybe I could spend another day on this, but, you know, it's fine. And here I have that, again, this is all just common sense to me, where I'm like, okay, I have this flat surface back there, it needs something. I go scrolling through the shapes. I'm like, this shape could work. And full disclosure, you saw all the models I made. So, you know, over the years, I have an idea of what's available to me in this smorgasbord of parts, which is always growing, which is cool. So now I'm thinking, I still want a greebly, but in grabbing this piece and thinking it's going to be a good greebly, I'm like, oh, this could be my top rail. Again, I'm not a gun person. I don't know anything about guns, but I know silhouettes, right? I have a visual library in my head, and I'm like, yeah, you kind of need this rail thing at the top, visual cues. Again, if you're a hardcore gun person, go crazy, make it accurate. But for me, I just like to create the silhouette and the vibe, and I like the idea of fantasy, right? It's like sometimes people forget that it's fiction, science fiction, right? So the fiction is licensed to have an imagination. So I get a little, you know, with the advent of YouTube and people being able to comment, you know, you get the feel good comments, but, you know, there's a lot of backseat drivers, which, you know, fair enough. I don't have a problem with that. But I think people forget that science fiction is fiction. And what I love about fiction is it gives me license to do whatever I imagine, right? So if I'm making a science fiction blaster and you say to me, well, that wouldn't be there because of, you know, in the way guns work or whatever, I don't care about that. I really don't. And I don't care that you care about that. Like, good for you. I think you should do that way. But I don't know why I'm going on this rant. Maybe this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. And this is my opportunity to share with you. Moving on. So you see there, what I'm putting there now, that greebly, what that is to me is lots of times in my physical builds, you know, I'll use that like vacuum cleaner hose, that like hose that's for like cleaning up computer wires. So that's an aesthetic that I like. And then you'll see I'm able to reproduce that virtually, right? So by putting that there, it is sort of a nod, a callback to what I do anyway, right? So even though it's virtual, it's still my hand. That makes sense. So now I'm thinking the muzzle, the barrel, I had those barrels. I think, I'll try different variations. But again, like I said, all this stuff is just me looking at this and thinking, oh, what's missing? Throwing something on there and thinking, oh, that works. And then the way that was sliced up, that was interesting. I didn't go with it, but the slice went into that muzzle, so it kind of unified that. And I was like, maybe. And then now I'm like, is it too donutty? Do I need to actually make this one more vectory? Just this shroud, this muzzle. Again, and I just wanted to reiterate all this stuff when I'm spinning around, moving it at 400%, tweaking it, none of it is precision, right? It's all vibe. It's all, oh, well, that goes here, this goes here. That doesn't look right. Why doesn't it look right? I don't know, but it just doesn't look right to me, so let's tweak it. And then here I'm still on the search for greeblies. I haven't sort of figured out what I'm going to do yet. All I know, again, what I keep saying is there's that face, that side there, something needs to go there. And again, I'm not cutting any of this out because I just want to share with you sort of my thought process, right? So I'm like, that's not working, that's not working. Bunch of stuff's not working. This isn't working. And then it's like, oh, this could work. So I'm like, maybe this one? And then the other thing about Tinkercad that I like is, right, so I think this works, but I need more of them. And then you just copy paste, and then now it knows I'm doing that, so I just like Apple D. And again, you'll figure this stuff out just messing around with it. So then that works. And then I could duplicate it and slide it over and just mirror it on the other side. And then everything's good to go. No super glue on my fingers. I think that's my favorite part about making 3D blasters is no super glue on my fingers. So then here, I'm like, okay, this top rail, maybe this needs to be flat. I'm gonna go in another direction, but again, just leaving this in here so you can just see the process. And the reason I think it's important to share the process is that, nothing's exact. I'm looking at that, I'm like, there's something, I need something there. I'm always thinking about the rail, that top rail. And it's like, I have no idea what that's for. I think it's where if you mount accessories to your gun, accessories to your gun. But silhouette, right? I'm driving all these things home. So here, I look for a diamond pattern. I find that. Now this is an interesting one. So, or it's an interesting part of the process to share. I'm like, I need something that looks like a grippy thing for a hand grip. So I find this pattern, I stretch it out. Now, I just inverted it so that it's raised. And again, I just take visual cues. I'm like, that looks like a hand grip. But what's interesting is that diamond pattern that I grabbed initially, I had no idea that I could inverse it and it would do this. I was just like grabbing stuff, pulling it around, moving it around, being like, okay, that works, this works. Pressing buttons. And it's like, oh geez, look at that. And then next time, I can guarantee you, months from now, if I'm making another blaster, that tool is in my toolbox now, right? So I'll be like, where's that diamond? Because that's what I like to use on the hand grips. So still, and if you notice, the top rail hasn't changed yet because I moved on to the hand grips because I was sort of stalled out on that, not sure what to do. And, moving around, thinking, I'm like, let's go back to the hand grips because that I can control. I got something going there. That's working. But, right, we were sort of stalled out on the greeblies. And now that, that was like a half hour ago in real time. Now we're on to the grips. And somehow I have greeblies on there. I don't know how it happened. It just did, right? So now I'm sort of double checking everything. This is the like forever hold your peace, and then I lock it in gray. That means, all right, I'm gonna live with this, moving on. But you see I still have that transparent top hat because I'm still not sure what the heck I'm gonna do on that top rail there. So here, sometimes, software doesn't want to cooperate. I am online right now, so it's maybe my connection is bad, all this stuff, but my fingers are not super glued together. Feel me, people? All right, so now I'm unlocking stuff, and here, off camera, I thought I was done, and then all of a sudden it occurred to me, and I came back on, I'm not doing that live here, but I was like, oh no, I got it. So you see I made all those segments, and I was like, oh yeah, that looks more like a rail. That's the ticket. And then I went across the shroud, and I'm like, yes, that's it. But here, I kind of, forever hold your peace. I'm like, but do the cuts go into the shroud, or does it stop short of the shroud, right? These are very pressing, important questions. And I'm like, okay, go into the shroud. In hindsight, maybe I'm not crazy about that idea, but sometimes, you just gotta go for it. And here, like, this is what I like, is like, oh, I gotta tweak it a little. And it's, you grab it and you pull it. There's no math, right? It's really like, I don't know. It's like, like clay, like Play-Doh. You're just moving stuff around, but it's virtual. And once you sort of bug out on it for a day, you get it, And what I always say about this stuff, it's just satisfying, even if you're just doing this, and that's how you're spending your day. It's not a bad way to spend the day. So here I'm just sort of tightening everything up, cleaning it up. The more I spin, it's mostly really what that is me thinking. I'm like, okay, this is it. But it's not it. Still one thing is missing. And so I'm like, oh, does it, you get so serious about this. Ooh, maybe just go up 1 millimeter. That's it. So now I'm like, okay, one thing left is this shroud. I got rid of the barrel because I thought, all right, it's futuristic. I have these sort of huge gaping vents, so obviously this is an energy weapon, right? So it creates heat, and all these vents are about keeping it cool. So I think the shroud is gonna need something. Then I get distracted. I think, well, what if there's, a barrel for each one of those pieces between the vents? And I'm like, well, that makes sense. And, it makes sense in a fictional fantasy sort of way. I don't know the science behind this blaster, but I certainly can invent it. And it's science fiction, and that'll be it, because I said so, because I imagined it. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to use your own imagination and stand by it, because it's never wrong, ever. So here, I'm like, what's missing? And I find with this stuff, I don't know if it's because of the Star Wars influence and the way they made those models, but it always seems to be the best aesthetics I find is like World War II military, right? So I'm like, aha, this needs, on the shrouds and the machine guns, right? It has those holes, I imagine. Again, it's like a cooling thing, a heating thing, a safety thing. Again, the knowledgeable people will correct me. It doesn't matter to me because this is science fiction and I'm trying to tell a story, and I know that in our collective brains, if we see these holes at the muzzle of the gun, they mean something, right? They don't, hopefully I've stressed this enough, they don't literally mean something, but visually they're a cue, right? And they get us going and just allow us to move forward with the story. So here, now if you remember, those are invisible, right? So now I'm going to group everything together, and that is looking like a blaster, right? And I hope what you got through this journey of me just taking you through my process is that, when we started, I didn't know what I was doing. I just had that shape of that piece that I downloaded so that I could get my geometry correct. And, I just started dragging parts in, pulling them around. And there is no wrong answers, right? It's like, okay. And then it's just virtual. And I'm happy enough with this that I definitely will do a part 2 video where, I print this out and we paint it, and, I could make the file available. Let me know below if that's something you want me to do, is make that file available. And here, 400%, I said this is sped up. So that means for 10, 15 minutes, I'm just messing around with these holes, trying to get them just right? So I don't want to, I know I try to communicate to you all it's easy, you can do it, whatever, but I do take time, right? And then now, I think that's my final answer. Look at that sucker. That is pretty cool. I'm happy with that. So now, let's do final answer. Yeah, coolio. All right, let's do the virtual beauty shots. I think for sure we need to print this and paint it. Let me know in the comments. That's a blaster, and I don't have super glue on my hands. This is not going to replace making things by hand, but it certainly is an alternative. Happy with that. Yeah! Now, typically this is the part of the video where I hold the thing up and go, yeah, but I'm happy with that. So I have a 3D printer, a new one, that's been sitting in my million-degree garage for about 4 or 5 months. Because my old one's on its last legs, but I haven't been, I talked about this at the top of this video, right? I typically do things when I need to do them, and then I'm all in, right? So it's not laziness, it's more like my appetites are so large for creating stuff that I get overwhelmed, right? So now I made this. Oh, I'm excited. I want to paint it. I want to make it an object to share with you guys. So I'll bust out that 3D printer and get that thing cooking, right? So, as always, you can go on eBay, check out some props from the history of the channel. They're for sale there. All the proceeds from that go to festival submissions for my short film Starfisher. If you're watching this in the future, I always throw a couple things from the channel up on eBay, so you might want to check that out. That always cycles back into content. Check out the book. Buy the book. Talks about why I do this. It's more of a mindset than a technical guide, which that seems to be a theme here. I think I'm more about sharing with you guys, look at me, you could do this too, rather than at minute 107, we move the piece A to piece B by 7 degrees, and the lighting is above, that stuff's important. I don't mean to undermine that. That's not what I'm about. I'm about let's do this. Big thanks to my Patreons. Support helps, all the support helps, but mainly just subscribe if you're not subscribed. But remember, I'm just here to help make sci-fi.
Hey, I'm just the avatar, but you might want to check out this video. maybe that video? For sure, subscribe if you haven't, and check out the merch. Buy some merch, that really helps. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the avatar.